The dreaded employee annual review process. Hopefully, you don't dread it, but a lot of people do. And this is something that can feel easy to procrastinate on and just not do because of that reason. So, managers typically don't usually love to give a lot of feedback. I would say in my career, I felt like most of the time this was pushed to the last minute. The meeting was minimized as much as possible. And there would usually never be any critiquing. It would just be, here's the things you did well. The very few times that something had to be critiqued, it was always like a difficult thing. I think we can all probably agree to that. It probably is what you see most of the time in the workspace. So having a process set up so that you just have a lot of these steps just start to happen so they don't procrastinate and that they do happen and you collect data that you need to see as a business is really helpful to have. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Basically, this just starts rolling things out. We're going to collect feedback from our peers. We're going to collect feedback from the person themselves. So do a self-assessment, collect feedback from the manager. So all that stuff's going to be happening. We're going to like automatically push to the person who has the annual review a link to schedule their own meeting. So this should take care of a lot of this just never happened. We never got around to it. We actually just want to formalize this process. Makes it a little bit easier as well, because when we collect those forms, it kind of speeds up the process. People are telling you what they think. Their team's telling you what you think. You're kind of giving yourself, what do I think if I am the manager? So again, just makes it a lot easier, less situations where we just don't do it. Okay. So we're going to talk about how this works, how you can set it up. The diagram is going to show us how a business automatically runs employee yearly reviews so no one's forgotten and everyone gets feedback on time. Now, as an employee, this was also super helpful. This can be a really good opportunity to learn as well. This is not just something that you should dread and hate doing every year. If you do this right, if you have a process set up, it should actually work to your benefit. You should be getting helpful critiquing as well as positive reinforcement on the things that you should continue to do. I think, again, because of the process, people procrastinate. They don't like to do it. They don't like to say the truth. It does usually create a bad experience. But reality is, if you do this right, this should be a really positive thing for the business as well as the employees. All right, so we have a new hire is how this is going to start. Basically, what you'll do if you're doing this in Salesforce, you're going to create a new user in Salesforce. They have access. And if they don't have Salesforce access, if they don't need it, there are a lot of businesses out there like that, you can always have users set up as just like records inside of Salesforce if you want to manage employees within Salesforce. So one of those two options, if everyone has access in your tech company, cool. You could just use the normal user record that comes with it when you give them a license. If not, set up user records and we can set it up that way. Now, when you do that, there's going to be a start date, kind of employee 101. You're always going to have that. So when we create a new hire inside of Salesforce or a new employee record, we're going to set that start date. What you're then going to do from there is have some sort of checkbox on the back end that's a formula that's just going to look for 1 year from now. And if it is 1 year from now, it's going to automatically check that checkbox as true. So when it checks it, that means it's true on the back end. And this is super helpful because what we will then set up is an automation that just looks for when the checkbox is true for these employees, do this thing. So it's only going to be checked once a year. That's when that will find it. It will set this process off and you'll be on and rolling. So anniversary date, it's just looking to see if it's been a year. If the answer is no, it's just obviously going to wait. Nothing's going to happen. It won't pick it up. It's only going to pick it up when it gets checked as true. And we're basically just waiting for that year. Once it hits that year, we're going to go down this process over here. So we're going to send the employee form. I didn't have enough room in there, but this is like the feedback form. So send that self-assessment form over to the person that is going to be reviewed. I would work with your HR department, what it is that you have outlined that they should be responsible for their performance. Again, this should make the process a lot better because in my career, especially working with growth stage startups, that's usually not defined. You kind of get in there and it's almost like their pitch when you first start working with them that you're going to wear a lot of hats and, you're going to have a stretch role and there's a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different stuff, and which is all fantastic and great, but it does sometimes put you in a hard position as an employee to know really what you're responsible for. And so this puts a little more accountability back on you as the company to really outline what is it that we are actually saying as part of this person's performance. So when they come to us for a raise, they come to us for a bonus, they come to us for a new title, we actually know if they actually did their job or not. not a gut feeling or like a gut check, right? So this is super helpful. Outline that with your HR department. They'll fill it out. They'll say what they think that they did in the last year. We're also going to send them a Calendly link to the manager that they have. Inside of Salesforce, you can set up who their manager is. So we'll pull that from them, have some type of Calendly link, send that over in the email as well. Hey, schedule a call within the next 7 days, next 5 days, whatever it is that you want to push. Typically, I see within like a week or so is pretty efficient that way. So set something up with some messaging inside that email when you want them to schedule, and then they can schedule it out. We're also going to send out the peer feedback forms. Now, when I've worked at bigger companies, enterprise companies, I had these a lot more than I did at growth stage startups, and I wish I had them at the growth stage startups. This is super helpful because these are the people I'm usually working with on the day-to-day. You're the people on the team that are going to be getting questions from that other individual. So do they ask me a lot of questions? Are they good questions? Are they bad questions? Do they waste my time? Do they help me? Have they stuck around late nights if I've needed them? Have they responded to Slacks well? So this is really like, I feel like the people that are vouching for you, they, in my opinion, have a better day-to-day experience with you than sometimes your manager. Your manager gets caught up in a lot of meetings and they're not necessarily always working with you. So these people in the trenches, I love this because then if you do have some type of bias as the manager, maybe you haven't been as connected as you want to be, or you're on the reverse, you're the employee and you feel like they have a bad bias towards you, having this is nice to share some feedback from people on the team. So I strongly recommend this. Work with HR again, what it is that we are trying to give feedback on. A lot of those that I mentioned are pretty common. How do they ask us questions? Do they get things done on time? Have I had any of my projects delayed because of them? Do they show up to work on time? That kind of stuff. Whatever it is that you want to judge their performance on, that's what the peer review should be for. All right. And then the next thing we want to do is also just notify the manager that this is all happening. So it's going to send all this information, but we also want to notify them that their annual review is coming up and this is going to be scheduled out here shortly. So that way they have a heads up, they can kind of start preparing on their own and get their ducks in a row. I would also say if you want to, in this space, you could also add that they could fill out their own. So if you want them to fill out their own form of how they think they've been doing, that's also helpful because then they have theirs. They'll get the self-assessment from the actual employee and they'll get the peer review and they can kind of look at the 3 notes together to see how they're lining up all together. So you can add that in here. That's not a step I have outlined, but definitely you can add that if you'd like to. After we do that, we're going to basically just follow up with this person to make sure it's all good to go until they schedule that meeting. So we're looking to see if the meeting has been booked. So did they schedule that through our Calendly? And if the answer is no, we're going to go through a series of reminders before then eventually emailing the manager to let them know they haven't scheduled this out. I would say if this is your self-assessment too, if you actually have to get your manager involved to schedule this, you're probably not looking great for that review right off the bat. But I would have this set up, things happen, people take PTO, they get wrapped up in another project. So do want to give some benefit of the doubt and somewhat of a nudge and reminder. It's pretty rare people do things right as they get an email. So having a couple reminders before you notify somebody is a good idea. Once you have it scheduled, that's going to be the end of our process. One last little call out that I would say, email versus Slack. Sometimes people ask me this. Usually the way I differentiate within businesses is email is like proper documentation. Not that HR can't use Slack messages and things like that if they needed to for legal reasons. Email is just a better paper trail that you should follow. It feels a little more polished. It feels a little more kind of like professional. If this is like telling us this is what happened and we can pull information from that. That's kind of the way I've always looked at it. So when I'm sending things like, hey, schedule your annual review or invoicing or billing questions, something just more professional that you want to have a paper trail of, I always go to email. I avoid Slack. Slack I've always used more as like shorthand. So if it's quick questions around something, talking just with another coworker, shooting the breeze, that kind of stuff, always you can use Slack. Doesn't mean you can't use Slack for this reason. You can always notify them there if that's where you guys live. But I would then bare minimum do at least both. That way you have a paper trail showing HR that, hey, yes, we did send an email. This is when it went out. This is when they received it. We saw that they received it, blah, blah, blah. So that's my difference between emails and Slacks in case you're wondering for that. Again, you can always do both, but I liked using email for more intentional purposes. Okay, perfect. So this is awesome to help the business really just make sure you're getting feedback that you want. I think it puts accountability where it should go. You either are going to have a good employee or a bad employee. Same goes for the business. You have a good business or a bad business. I feel like I've been a little bit of both. I've had some situations where maybe I could use some feedback and critiquing to do better and get pushed. And that's definitely happened. And then other times I feel totally lost because I have no idea what my responsibilities are. And I'm not getting any help from my manager or the business to push me on that. So having this formalized kind of balances those two things out. It's very clear what everybody needs to do. It's very clear what you're responsible for, and you can hold people accountable on both sides. Makes it easier for you to have HR as your advocate and vice versa, the business having HR for their advocate if they have to coach another employee that they've hired. Okay, so if you'd like this set up in your business, you don't have it set up, we've done this a number of times. There's a link in the description below. You can click that. First things first, we're going to see if we're a good fit as your consultants. We don't work with everybody. We work with specific businesses because that's what we do as far as tech businesses making at least $3 million in revenue. That's kind of our starting point. So first thing we want to check is if we are a good fit for you guys. If we are a good fit, we can come in. We'll talk about your new hire onboarding process, what this looks like, and then we can set this automation up for you if you'd like us to do that. Again, link is in the description. If that is you, looking forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks.